So I'm Mick Monk. I'm a cloud solutions architect, mostly focusing on infrastructure as a service in Azure, moving workloads to Azure. Helping customers get a foothold in Azure and synchronizing identities and SQL workloads, virtual machines, all that good stuff. So we've got a lot to talk about, and I'm going to be flying through a lot of slides. If you want to interrupt me, feel free to do so. It's not going to be quite as interactive as some of what Alonso was doing earlier, because, just because the logistics of having you guys spin up things in Azure all at the same time, it's just not going to work out. But we're going to do some demo in the portal, deploy some virtual machines, take a look at SQL as a service, and SQL on IaaS, and then some backup and disaster recovery stuff towards the end. Do want to point out, Catapult recently got the Microsoft Partner of the Year award, which is quite an accolade. And on that note, let's get into it. So what is cloud computing? Well, basically it's the ability to pool resources together. So you don't necessarily anymore need to deploy a one-to-one relationship for a service or an application. And in the cloud, you don't even need to do that as an individual customer anymore. You have the ability to provide self-service, so you can provision on demand. You can give your users self-service capabilities if they want to, reset their own passwords in the cloud. You have elastic compute storage, which Alonso talked a little bit about earlier, and of course it's all usage-based. So you only pay for what you're actually using. Some of the challenges historically that customers have faced is the server sprawl, where you've got not so much a one-to-one physical to application relationship since the birth of virtualization, but certainly still, even with virtualization, you end up with on-premise infrastructure, which sometimes can be sitting there not doing very much. A lot of the IT budgets spent maintaining inflexible and siloed data center equipment. Compliance and security is often cited as a top concern for any organization. And infrastructure complexity. I've personally worked in some pretty major global companies and done some complex migrations, and I've seen this firsthand many times, that some of the stuff that's been deployed historically and that's running and powering some of these services, it's off the scale, really. I mean, and then trying to go in there and reduce that complexity basically into another project that consists of another set of hardware, another set of resources, a whole other project that might run for a year or two, and then at the end of it, 3 years later, you've got another set of complexity that you have to deal with again. And from the business owner's perspective, there's this mindset that, well, I can get it better and faster and cheaper if I avoid working with the IT guys, right, or the IT teams, because there's all these processes in place that they generally don't match to, sort of business processes. And IT is seen as a bottleneck, and then, the business tries to work around it, and we all know what happens then. And same for you developer types. IT can be seen as slowing you down. Transformations, so I can't speak much about the mainframe era. Maybe Alonso could. He's a little bit older than me. Just kidding, mate. But I can speak about client server era. I've been doing this since the days of NT4 and Windows 95, I suppose, and a little bit of Novell prior to that. Then came the internet, and of course the web-based applications. And then the early 2000s was when virtualization really came into its own, and I mean that really was a game changer. And I kind of wish I'd have bought shares in VMware, in 2002. But here we are now. The cloud, I mean it's basically taking the virtualization to you know, an even more abstract level. So here are some of the computing demand patterns. You know, you've got workloads that are either on or off. You know, batch jobs, for example, maybe payroll systems that run twice a month. For the rest of the month, they're not really doing very much, but you know, you still need to provision some capacity on which they can run on, and you know, they can run efficiently to deal with the peak. You've got services which are growing fast. They might start out real small, but you might foresee that in 3 months, or 6 months, you know, you anticipate that growth is going to be quite exponential, and you know, generally that means you would have to invest right up front to provision that hardware, even if you're not going to use it for 3 to 6 months. Unpredictable bursting, you know, where you've got flash sales, for example, if you're a retailer. And also, you know, predictable bursting where you might be a regular company and you know that between 8 and 10 in the morning you're going to have a peak log-on time, and you know, your Active Directory domain controllers are going to get hammered, but for the rest of the day they're also not going to be doing very much. So some of the drivers for cloud adoption. Security, yeah, it's always a big one. Agility, to where, you know, the business and IT can quickly get what they want. Focus, you know, whether I'm IT or the business, you want to be able to focus on what's, you know, what your job is. If you're just going to be provisioning resources and maintaining and patching and securing them all the time, you know, that's really taken away from, you know, better things that you could be doing. From the business side, you might be wasting time and money, you know, trying to get things provisioned properly, taking away from what your core business is. And then, you know, of course, the economics, where the cloud is driving a lot of savings on that front too. And some of the blockers, of course, security. People worry about, you know, how secure is my data? Where's it going? You know, does it leave the country, for example? You have compliancy challenges. A lot of organizations are driven by regulatory acts, also by the government, of course. So whether it's, you know, things that are the industry's forcing upon you, or, you know, government compliance, these are all valid concerns. And then compatibility, where, you know, if you build a cloud infrastructure, I mean, it's for everybody, right? So it doesn't out of the box always automatically just suit every customer. You might have a very unique set of processes and infrastructure requirements. You know, so to address those challenges, IT budget, they're always under pressure to do more with less. The elasticity, where we talked about the rapid fluctuations, and then the security and compliance we just spoke about. So here we've got basically 3 stacks of the service models in the cloud: infrastructure as a service, PaaS, platform as a service, and software as a service. I'm sure you're all pretty familiar with those 3 terms. IaaS is basically talking about, you know, hosting. PaaS would fall into the category of building. So if you're an application developer, you generally build things on platform as a service. And software as a service is, you know, where the end user can consume the actual the service itself. And you know, how does that stack out? So in the traditional sense, on the left there, everything in green is, you know, it's on-premise. You're managing everything, right, from the network, the storage, the server infrastructure, right through to you know, the application stack. When you move it over to infrastructure as a service, the areas in blue there, the virtualization layer, the physical servers, the storage and the networking, that becomes managed by, in this case, Microsoft. And you manage everything from the operating system upwards. So you still have some level of control. You know, you basically you're logging onto Windows just as you would, you know, if you were remote desktop to your machine in your own data center. You're responsible for patching the OS, but you can pretty much do everything apart from, you know, press the power button on and off. If you switch to the PaaS model, You then only have control of basically the application tier and the data tiers. And for some services, that's all you might need. And it's a great offering. You know, you let somebody else take care of all the physical aspects, the patching of the operating system, and all the rest of it. And then the solution, the software as a service, where basically everything is managed by the vendor. Some of you may have seen this. It's quite a funny sort of analogy that's been around for a while. Pizza as a service, where you know you make it at home, you're responsible for the dining table right through to the cheese and the toppings. And as you progress over to the right, you know, if you dine out, you know, they provide the dinner table and the utensils and the pizza and the soda and all the rest of it.
Are these slides available on anywhere that we can see later?
Some of them. I don't know how that works with the marketing team, but I'm sure we can make some of them available. I mean, that last one's generally available. I think there was a guy at IBM that came up with that one. But yeah, it's pretty funny. So Azure is available, you know, in 30 regions worldwide. It's actually more than AWS and Google put together. So they've pretty much got everywhere covered, and this is changing, expanding, you know, month by month. There's always new regions coming up, particularly with Azure Government. I know some of you are state and local government. Currently there's 2 Azure Government clouds, one in Iowa and one in Virginia, and there's a couple more coming on board soon, specifically for Department of Defense, and you know, there's a whole compliance that goes with that. We'll talk about that briefly in a minute. This is really just showing what services in Azure, you know, map to which platform. If we start at the bottom, this is a physical infrastructure there, you know, the data center. On top of that are the infrastructure services where, you know, you've got the networking. These are all services within Azure. Virtual network, load balancers, DNS, traffic distribution. So if you wanted to global traffic manage your application between Europe and the US, for example. Storage, SSD storage is called premium storage in Azure. And then you've got, you know, regular hard disk, which is considered standard storage. And of course, the physical servers, the compute stack. Platform as a services, there's a whole, you know, there's a wealth of that going on. SQL as a service. You've got the big data analytics and the Internet of Things. I'm sure you've heard that buzzword going around. You know, it's pretty much everything you can buy nowadays has got a sensor, and it can, you know, you can control your AC from your AC unit at home from your smartphone on the way back from the airport. Things like that. Media services, integration services, and then the whole security and management stack on the left-hand side there, some of which we'll get into when we talk about the identity and access management piece. So Azure Security, we're going to touch on this pretty quickly, and there's going to be a small YouTube video from Sati and Della in a minute. But this is a physical construct of a typical Azure data center. Highly secure, of course, from a physical perspective. Inside these huge buildings, you've got basically these shipping containers you see on the top right, and inside those containers is what's on the bottom left there. So, you know, racks and racks of physical equipment, and then you've got these poor guys on the bottom right who have to get locked up in there and work on that stuff day in, day out. But they've made, you know, pretty major investments into security to ensure resilience from you know, outside attacks. Physical security is paramount, of course, and then once the data is sitting inside these data centers, you have encryption technologies at up to 256-bit, which is going to protect the data whether it's at rest or in transit. So some of those protection features: physical security 24/7, you've got centralized monitoring and alerts, update management, antivirus and anti-malware protection, penetration testing. There's a whole team dedicated to, monitoring outside attacks, denial of service attacks, and the like, and then DDoS defense techniques. So they really do. Microsoft really does take a holistic approach to security. And the three main areas are to protect, detect, and to respond to those threats. Just going to break out to this little speech from Satya. This was at the recent keynote.
It is a tumultuous and even turbulent time in which we live. The contents of any computing device today contain the privacies of life.
This is our new approach, a new platform, new intelligence, and new partnerships.
As a company, we're focused on taking a holistic approach, protecting, detecting, and responding to security threats. An approach that starts with identity and then considers devices and applications and infrastructure and data itself.
We spend over $1 billion of R&D each year in building security into our mainstream products. It's not just the technology that we deliver, it is the platform technology coupled with intelligence.
We have trillions of data points coming in from billions of endpoints, and it's that ability to understand and gain insight and take action from that data that can make all the difference.
And we share that intelligence broadly with our customers, with our partners, so that we can collectively secure our environment. This is not just about Microsoft, this is about us working together as an ecosystem.
And that's pretty compelling stuff there. So you can see, that's from the top down in Microsoft that, security is really at the forefront of, their minds, and of course it's an important consideration. These are the compliance audits and certifications Azure has. Again, particularly the US ones, FedRAMP certified, HIPAA for the healthcare industry, the CGIS. So I think they have the most certifications for moving workloads into Azure, and you have this guarantee of data compliance. You can find out more about all of this stuff from what's called the Microsoft Trust Center. Go there and check it out. A lot of answers to your questions can be found there. There's a whole wealth of information about it.